Hey everyone, welcome back. It's John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com, and today I have Jennifer Hay with me, and we are going to be talking about a topic that I know a lot of you developers have been asking me about. It's a topic I've written about a lot, and it's resumes, and you really want to talk to Jennifer because she knows all about resumes. She's a professional resume writer for the tech industry. She can help you write your resume. So she's the perfect person to ask. So thanks for doing this, Jennifer.
Well, I hope that I can meet your expectations.
Oh. I'm sure you can. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself first of all?
My background is really more specifically in business intelligence and data warehousing. So that's where I started out at the University of Washington as part of their team, and then I went on to work for the Data Warehousing Institute. And then 2008 hit. And I was unemployed, and so I decided that to kind of use my writing skills and so forth and my tech background, and this is where I ended up.
Awesome.
So, okay.
And how long have you been doing professional resume writing?
Oh my goodness, 7 or 8 years now.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
And what I guess a good way to start us off is a lot of software developers, they think their resume is good.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? When you see a software developer resume, no offense, I mean, software developers, okay, we're good at writing code. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily bad at writing, but when you see someone's resume in general, what do you see?
Okay, the thing I have, and I'll tell you that sometimes the geeky software developers are my favorite people, okay, because there's the most opportunity to do a really great job, okay. So that's how those projects start. So that one of the things is people get a little bit too attached to the technology, though.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll tell you that one of the struggles I have, I don't want to call them my older guys, but so one of the struggles I have is that they have trouble letting go of the technology, even though things may have changed and so forth. So part of it, and what I say to people especially when you're looking at the older parts of your resume, is think in terms of what is this going to mean to someone who maybe was in junior high school when you did this and so forth. So it's for your later stuff, it's more about what you did as opposed to the technology that you used. Okay, and that's one thing that's often missing is sort of like the connection, the why connection, right? You may get the technical connection, but you need to think in terms of what's going to be more meaningful for someone who maybe needs a particular skill set and so forth. So that's the first thing to do, and think in terms of why was I doing this? Why was the project funded? Why am I spending the time on this? So that's one of the biggest challenges.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So instead of focusing so much on, I use C++, blah, 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 like technology, I built a bridge. They don't care if you used wood or if you use steel. Like it's the new tech. Like, can you build a bridge? And that's what they want to know. That's timeless, right?
Yeah, and the thing is that one of the challenges is, okay, so you look at a job description and they actually will list all the technology that they need.
Right.
And a lot of times you're like, is there actually a living person that could fulfill all these requirements? And so you got to think that if you know one type of technology, you're going to pick up another one. It's just, you get into IT because you love the problem solving, you like figuring stuff out, right? I'm guessing that was part of what attracted you. Maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so you need to, well, anyway, so that's just part of to think about why you were doing something, and especially like, for example, if you're doing anything with embedded technology, that actually gets worse because you're even more kind of separated from the original project. So it's just thinking in terms of why were you working on it? And that's one of the exercises I go through with people. Let's talk about what was the overall challenge. Why were you brought into the project? And you know what? I was actually reading. You did a thing with contractors starting their own business.
Yeah.
So I was taking a look at that. And do you mind if I just talk about that a little bit?
Oh no, go ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So the thing is that with the people contracting, you even have to be a little bit closer to the business than maybe you might not otherwise have to be. Like, so for example, if you're, for technical, you're looking at an IT department and so forth, you might get away with being a little bit more technical. But when you start talking to clients and whatever, they want both.
Right.
So you need to think in terms of how would you express that business value? And it's so elusive. People think about the ROI, and that doesn't make sense. You need to think about how did the technical team benefit, and then how the business benefited. So when you're a contractor and you're writing your resume, put it out there. Put down what was the primary challenge with the project. Why was the project funded? Put that on your resume.
All right, I see. Okay.
To actually to tell them that. Anyway, so I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but that's just make it a little bit more engaging.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it gives them a little bit more background behind it, so they can see themselves in a similar situation maybe, and see how you could have solved their problem, right?
Exactly, and also they want to see your interest and your passion. And you don't want in your resume, you can say, well, I'm passionate about this or that, but you can express that. When you're talking about your projects, if you're just talking about the technology, that's not particularly engaging.
Right.
So why not get into something that talks about the specific challenge? This is just an example. I had one guy that had to implement, it was an ERP system. He had to implement the ERP system and the system had been purchased by the president of the company because he liked the salesperson.
Oh, okay, right.
You're seeing where the story is going, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he still has to implement it.
Yeah.
And the system was he didn't need this huge system. So the story was about how he made this work. All right.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
And if you're in an interview, can you see that resonating with people?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They think the same thing. They think, oh well, yeah, this is a bad thing, but this guy is able to turn something bad and turn something around that was bad and make it good.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Sorry, my eyes water when I'm laughing and stuff. So, okay.
So maybe tell me a little bit about some of the biggest mistakes that you see. We talked about a few of them, but maybe some of the biggest mistakes you see, especially with software developers with their resume.
Let me see. First of all, one challenge that I see, it's not just with software developers, but a lot of people think that there's certain rules about how long your resume should be.
Oh, okay.
One page. Oh my God, I've heard one page that was popular 15 years ago, 2 pages popular 6 or 7 years ago, and what they do is they want to limit because they think that there's specific resume rules, and they don't want to include things on your resume that actually would be valuable. See, what you can do is you can set up your resume so that you're talking about the overall achievement and so forth, but you can use sub-bullets that draw out your personality. Like, for example, if you want to show more leadership skills, if you're using a storytelling process, first of all, you don't want to just say, I lead teams, whatever, that's fine, but engage, talk about a specific project. If you were working on a project and there was a particular troublesome thing, like, for example, people want to veer away from the particular challenges in the company because they don't want to appear to be negative, but you can still approach those. I mean, like I had one guy who started his job, he went in and they had fans on the floor.
Okay.
because the systems were overheating. So,
oh gosh, yeah, that's a great story.
But think about when you're even for software developers, even if you're, that maybe what you're doing is not so much of a business contribution, but a technical team contribution.
Right.
It's not always specifically only about the business. Sometimes what you're doing is you're contributing to this team so they can then go on and whatever it is that you're doing, if you're participating in the software development or for products or services or whatever, and you want to think about what's your contribution. And that's one thing I don't see a lot. All right. It's just about, I implemented using this technology. Talk to me about who you work with.
Right. Okay.
Because especially if you're working as part of a software development person, talk about your relationships with the other team members, because a lot of this has to do with a culture fit.
Right. I see. Yep.
And so don't make the person kind of imagine if you're a good person or not, and saying that you're a good culture fit will never work.
Right.
So describe those things that are important to you. And I know this seems odd, and people say, well, how am I going to fit that in? You would be amazed. Just first, if you just write out this information, and then either do it yourself or hire someone to condense it down into a nice, tight story.
Yes. It's really interesting. Some of the things that you're saying here are reminding me of copywriting technique. Like, and I always tell developers that your resume is like an ad. It's your ad for yourself. Yes. It's an advertisement. Yes. And I think that's one of the skills that I think someone like you possesses, but a developer doesn't necessarily possess. Like, it takes a special skill to do that, right? I mean, it's not like you just can suddenly write a concise story, and even to know to use a storytelling process. I think that's something that I think developers just don't even really think about, right?
Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, okay, there's new product development, the fancy stuff or whatever, but what about the maintenance programmers?
Right.
Okay. I mean, people, I don't know, it always seems like when you go into IT departments, those are the junior staff, bring in the junior staff to do the maintenance programming, when in fact, that's one of I'll tell you that the most skilled people I've met are the people that can maintain systems that were created by others.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, the ability to be able to go in there and understand how people think and so forth. Those, why not in your resume if that's what you're really good at? People always downplay that, the maintenance program, that's boring, nobody wants to do that. But that's in fact one of the most creative parts of programming, at least from my perspective, so you got to think about kind of that value as part of your value proposition.
That makes sense. And I guess most jobs, when they put their job requirements out there, they don't really say you're going to be doing maintenance, but you're going to be doing maintenance. so they want to know that you did it good, and you're happy doing it, and you.
yeah, or maybe not happy, but you tolerate it.
Exactly. Yeah.
The thing is that it can be for a lot of people, especially if you've got multiple people that were involved in the code, which you most likely do. The fact it's very creative. It's creative. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzling exercise.
Very true.
Some people, might really, maybe not full time, but might really enjoy that.
Now, what about, I've got a lot of people in the Simple Programmer audience who are, this was me at one point. I eventually went back and got my degree, but they're developers that don't have their degree yet. And this is always like a sore spot, especially it come on resume, right? Because I remember when I was trying to write my resume, I would be like, well, I'm definitely not putting education at the top,
Yep.
And then I'm, try to hide it as much as possible, incomplete degree, or projected future date of degree, and that always seemed lame to me. And so what do you think about this? Like, what should someone, if they don't have their degree yet, maybe they're working on it, maybe they're not, how should they handle that on a resume when they write their resume?
That's a real challenge, because the fact is that because most applicant tracking systems, are going to see your resume first. Yeah, and if you don't get that, that BS or MBA or whatever. There's a couple, I don't want to call them tricks because you never want to be dishonest. You never, don't even want to skirt that issue.
Exactly. Totally agree.
But
yeah.
You probably have seen this, and you sort of alluded to that a second ago, is that there's ways that you can talk about if you're in the loop, if you're actively pursuing, you can certainly say that, actively pursuing the expected graduation date, not 4 years in the future. I've seen that somebody just registered. I'm like, no, we can't do that.
No.
But let's say that you've got a good solid year. You got a good toward, you can start to talk about that you're working toward, and maybe then you just talk about your associate's degree or something like that. You can talk about working toward that, but be really clear, or what you can do is, like, for example, if you're done and you're really not going back, you can say that you completed, 2 years, and maybe even include some courses. Like, I actually wrote, I've got a book on Amazon about writing resumes for people that have returned to school or recently graduated.
Oh, okay.
I have lots of examples in there. They can, if people want to look that up. But, oops. Lost my glasses. I used my other ones. So I'm sorry, I kind of deviated from the question there for a moment.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, you're saying that you wrote a book about how, because we were talking about the college, if you don't have college, how do you deal with that on your resume, or you haven't completed your degree?
Yeah, and actually, what I did for one person that was really interesting is that he had gone to 3 different schools. Right. And when you added up everything and I looked at all the courses that he had taken and so forth, I ended up saying that he had and we checked it off, checked it off against the requirements and so forth. I actually said that he had the equivalent of of a degree. And then we listed everything, but as long as it's easy for people to understand and it makes sense to them, and they're not going to think that the person's being devious, it's perfectly fine to do that.
Right. Now, what if you don't have any schooling or anything at all? Is there a way that you can kind of structure your resume to more highlight the skills or the experience, or how would you recommend someone to go about it with that process?
Part of it is, everybody says this, that once you've started and you've got a couple years of experience, that the degree and the certifications aren't nearly that important. But, there's lots of companies that they just want that BS degree. Yeah. I haven't actually had that. People have always, that they've taken a course, or we can even, I don't know. I mean, sometimes the reality is you don't have the degree. Right. And you don't want to say that you've got something, or that you're pursuing it if you're really not, or I don't know. That just have to be a discussion, and maybe that's just part of, you don't have that degree, and what you need to do is you need to network more. But the thing is that most times, using Monster and Dice or whatever, those are just a waste of your time.
Right, exactly.
I mean, go ahead and do that so it makes you feel better. But the reality is you want to network into companies.
Exactly.
LinkedIn's a tremendous resource. So you want to make those connections with people where the degree just isn't going to matter as much. And even if you have the degree, you still need to use a more customized job search.
Right, exactly. Right. So, yeah, you should be tailoring it to the job, not just blasting. A lot of people blast out like 500 resumes. Yeah. And that's
nobody cares about that. It's a waste of time.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely challenges, and definitely I recommend to developers to market themselves, to build a reputation, brand, to network, to do things because you don't want to come in. The first time a company's ever heard of you is not because your resume came on someone's computer system or a desk. That doesn't, to me, it's good to have a really good resume, of course, but to me, that shouldn't be the first time they heard of you.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that if people don't have, they don't have a degree, people often are having certifications. They've done they've gone through some kind of educational process. right? And those are the kinds of things that you can highlight if you have different, like I've had quite a few people actually that are going back for the security certifications, in light of all the data breaches and everything. So they're going back for that. So,
Sure.
If you don't have the degree, then maybe you want to focus in on if you're getting new certifications that fit the new market and so forth, then you can certainly focus in on those.
Okay. Now, what about specializing, like creating a specialized resume? I think, one piece of advice I give to software developers all the time is that they need to have some kind of specialization. That I think I made this mistake a lot in the past, or at least I thought it was a mistake. Is I used to list all these skills on my resume. It was like all these old skills and C++ and all this stuff that every operating system. Oh, I can use Word and Excel and and I'm and I see this a lot of times. Instead of now, I think I try to tell people to be very, very focused. Like they should be able to say you are the person who does this. Like what do you think about your resume towards that?
That's one. Okay, when you're talking about like the big mistakes people make, okay, their technology section. Like when I was talking about people have a hard time letting go of technology. I actually told one. I actually looked at one person's resume and I said, your resume is not an antiques roadshow.
Yeah.
So, because there's like if you have too much of the older stuff, then you're letting the reader decide you can do the older stuff. Okay. And if that stuff bores you to tears now, then what's the point? So you got to think you're communicating stuff, too much old stuff, then you need to, and so it's a balance. You want a little bit more. So then you get rid of some of the older stuff. Maybe a more employable place is someone who can handle newer stuff and some of the older stuff. Right.
Right.
Because that's everybody's got. I had at the University of Washington, the common statement was that we're developing legacy systems all the time. Or it was like, oh no, we're building new legacy systems every day.
Nice.
So, because there's always going to be old stuff.
Exactly.
So then you can do that middle of the road things. Or if you just want the newer stuff, you might have to decide to let go. Even if you did some really cool things, you might have to decide to let go of that.
Yeah. I think a lot of based on the 15-page resumes that I see sometimes, I think a lot of developers have trouble letting go of their pet because they don't want to leave anything out.
I've actually had extensive conversations with people about batch processing.
Nice.
Okay. And the fact that no, we can include that if you really, really want. But trust me that we're getting into older territory here. So and sometimes you just need to have a conversation with people that say no.
Right.
we're not including that. So
now, what about the visual presentation of a resume? I think a lot of developers also, they're kind of in this mindset of, oh, I don't like to play that game. They should look at my skills and hire me. They want this what's it called, meritocracy. Like they want it to be just based on skill, and they should just be able to have a double spaced monotype, single font resume that just says the facts. What do you think about that?
Actually, the resume style that I see for a lot of software developers is tiny font.
Yeah.
And no space. No
right.
space.
Got to fill all that. I got all those technologies. I got to pack them all in there, right?
Yeah, because we're not. I'm like, when you code, do you not ever add space? I mean, so I see that a lot. Because we get as much as possible, and if it's really tiny, well, they can just increase the view. I mean, they can just blow it up. So you want to stay away from that. Loosen up a little bit. Relax. Have a glass of wine.
Right.
Use a bigger font style. Okay. So, I mean, that's going to be really important in how that, how the information is presented. So.
Okay. Yeah. So that, I mean, and then when people look at it, right, I mean, I think it makes an impression, right? Like if you see something that looks beautiful, even if before you've read it, you feel good about that person, right? It's like,
and first of all, you gotta, I'll use images in resume. All right. More likely to do that in Europe because they don't use a lot of the applicant tracking systems that we do here.
Right.
So, and they, as you would imagine, those systems are not going to be able to parse out if you put an image in there or whatever. But you can add color to your resume.
Yeah.
Make it stand out a little bit. I've used images for all different kinds of things. I did one for a data center manager. And what it did is, so I'm not talking specifically about ROI, but in an indirect way. So what we did is we talked about the increase in servers versus the increase in capabilities. And I did this graph. And so that communicated kind of his brand. So yes, it's perfectly fine if you want to bring out color. And I do have people that say that, well, that doesn't look like other resumes. I'm like, well, that's exactly the point.
Yes, exactly.
Point. You don't want anything outrageous, but you can make it attractive and just so it's easier for people to read through the resume.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to get noticed a little bit so that just blend in with everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So another question here is, I think also, obviously I don't want to put too much emphasis. Like we said, we talked about networking and marketing yourself and, really not just having the resume be the only thing, but how important is a good resume? Like in terms of, I always talk about we don't really have to talk exact ROI numbers because who knows what those are. But I invested in professional resume writing when I was a developer, and I noticed a huge result for me. What do you think? What are kind of some stories or results that you've seen where maybe someone wasn't able to get a job, or they were, it made a big difference on having a really good resume versus a bad one?
You see, it's not just the resume; it should be the process.
Okay.
The process for create, if you go in and you have your resume written and there's a 20-minute call and that's pretty much it, then you get the document and you weren't involved in the process for that. So
right.
One of the main things is that, just about everybody hates to go in for a job interview. There might be those few people that really enjoy that process. But so you hate that process and you're like, they're going to ask you, well, tell me about a project you worked on was particularly challenging or whatever. And you're like, those dreaded interview questions. So creating your resume should be about preparing for the interview. Right.
Right. Exactly.
It could be. And that's, let me just describe how I work, and everybody has their process. So what my clients actually do is they have to write out stories about the projects, and the story, I tell them, it's like a brain dump. I said, don't filter it out. It can be as casual as, came into the office Monday and the servers are down or whatever. So it's just a narrative because you want to know the ins and outs. And that's when your personality comes out and so forth and all the details. So this is the information that you can then include in your resume. So you want to kind of do a brain dump, get all the information together and then make that decision.
Right.
So for example, let's say that, you don't really want to do your resume. You want to prep for it. All you have to do is make an audio file. And like you're describing the project that, when you came in and what were the issues and so forth, just to get the information down, right? Because you're going to forget about it.
Right.
That's painful. See, it's hard to go back. Well, okay, 4 years ago, what was that exactly? So, just do something as easy. Just do a little audio file. The project was successful. It's on your mind. Do this little file. Make it easier for yourself.
Right.
So then you have the information together, and the fact is that you're going to have to create a resume and then customize it.
Right. Exactly. Yes. For each job, people hear that. That's why you can't blast 5,000 resumes out, because you can't customize. You only need to get one job anyway. What do you?
But you're going to have to come at it from 5,000 different ways.
Right.
So that's what you're going to have to do. But the customization is that you don't want to be a completely different personality.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Like on LinkedIn, you can't be 5 people. You got to be 1 person. So you can't step away from that. You need to know who you are. You can't want to become a CIO, but hey, I'd really be willing to do embedded software development too if that was available. So you got to kind of decide what's your career path. But
Right.
actually, do you mind if I deviate there for just?
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah.
So the thing is that I actually, this is based on another resume writer wrote something, and I thought this isn't right. And he was just saying about how planning your career, all right?
Okay.
That you need to have it structured. You need to think and plan what are you going to be doing. And I after I read that article, I thought to myself, I don't know of anybody that planned their career.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, did you plan this out? Was this kind of what you envisioned?
Oh no, I had no idea. I mean, if you would have told me that I'd be like my job would be interviewing people and writing, and if you told me my job was writing, which my job is primarily writing now, that would be I would have said I got a D in English. There's no way, no way. But there is something that I did do, which is, and I always tell people, like, because everyone says, oh, what's your 5-year plan? Okay, I look forward into the future, and I have, like, I can see really distantly it's blurry of where I want to go, and I head that direction. And I have a very, like, in front of me, if you tell me, if you say, what are you doing next week, John, or next month, I have a really solid plan. You got to plan that out. You got to know what but far out, you can only see, you got to be heading a direction. But then when you actually get closer, you revise it. I'm constantly revising where I see myself in 3 to 5 years from now, because you don't know what, I mean, you can't plan that out.
Yeah. And the thing is that, and I kind of laughed at that, because I thought people, I mean, this is just my impression. People get into IT. Well, there's those people because they want a more stable job history or a job. But most people get in because they're fascinated by it. Right? And so what happens is you're in a company, there's a technology that comes out, there's an opportunity to be involved in the project, or for me, I think most people succeed in IT, it's opportunity based.
Right.
Yep. Something comes up, you hear about it, great, and you jump on it, And so I think that's most people, how and then opportunity comes up and you want to take advantage of it. And I think people are going to be most successful when they can be a little bit flexible and agile in the type of work that they're doing.
Yep, I totally agree. Yeah, it doesn't mean you don't plan anything. You know what you plan your training and how you're going to develop as a person and become better, but then you leave yourself open for opportunity to change the direction.
Yeah. I mean, it is not the same as becoming working in insurance or something like that, where that's all very structured and very planned out, right? And actually, we don't want it to be that way anyway.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. But and tell me what you think about this. But I think when you actually, like, prepare your cover letter and your resume, it's almost the opposite. It's like you want to appear like you're the perfect, like, this is exactly what you want to do. Like that you want to focus it directly to that job, so that it's as if it is your plan, even though, I mean, things may change in the future, but right. Is that, like, because I think a lot of people, like you said, I've heard it, I've said it myself, is, oh, well, I would take a CIO job, or I could do a software development, or I could do this. And it's like, no. Just like, if you tell people you're a jack of all trades, they're going to think that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, man. That jack of all trades, though, now this is just how I see it, that there were some time when people wanted lots of drill down. All right. You got to be very specific. Now it's the jack of all trades, but a lot of people are concerned about that. And people say that, well, I do a little bit of everything. And for a lot of companies, that's really sellable.
I see. Okay.
Okay. It's not a bad thing. That especially if you're going to talk about a resource constrained environment and so forth, that you're going to be doing a little bit of everything. So, yeah.
Okay, so you could sell that as a plus, I suppose.
Yeah, why not? Why not just say that the thing is that you're selling adaptability. All right.
Right.
And the number one thing I think for companies now, for like in the 2000s, it was a cost reduction, right? Because there's a tremendous opportunity, 40%, 50%, process improvement or process automation. You had lots of that. Now it's innovation, and how, it's hard to put a number around that. And with innovation, you have to have flexibility, adaptability. So it's not just about, one big message now is business agility.
Right.
Throw that around, it's getting overused, but that's the reality, that companies have to be agile. The same thing is true within the technical departments, and it's not just about the, whatever the methodology that's being used. It's about how you think and how you respond. And if you're going to be adaptable to that, then companies are going to love you.
Right, exactly. Yep, totally agree. Yep.
And one thing that you can do, here, this is just going on another tangent, but let's say that you don't, for software developers, this is why it's so much easier for them to find IT jobs using new technology. All you have to do is use the new technology.
Right.
Okay. Right. So, okay, here's an example. I had one guy. So in the LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile, in your summary, it can be anything. So what we talked about is the guy had developed software for Legoland.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Legoland in California is amazing. There's landscapes. And so what he did is, in his free time, because he's passionate about software development, he created the software so they know all the different pieces and how many they need and the colors. Legoland actually uses his software.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's a great story.
He simply did this because of the sheer love of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can include that on your resume. You have a built-in, all you have to do is create an environment, develop an environment, get the software, use it. You can put that in your resume.
Oh, yeah. And it shows passion, it shows competency, and it's an interesting story. I mean, I'm interested in the story, right? I'm going to actually read that resume as opposed to scan, because I scan the lines when I'm interviewing developers. I know I did this, blah, 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 spearheaded. And then, but then if I saw, created the software used by Lego, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Seriously,
you could even put a tiny little image of one of their it is actually, I actually went there to see the New York landscape, or so you could put a little image there. So that, but you see where for software developers, there's tremendous opportunity. You can become a software developer. If you just start out, create your own projects and so forth, or, I don't know, get somebody to sponsor you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's different ways that you can present this and be completely truthful about what you're doing. People want someone who's software developers in particular. They want that. You mentioned it at the beginning, the enthusiasm, and passion.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like, I mean, it's interesting, just talking to you, I think my impression has changed over the years, but I think a lot of software developers, maybe the impression, or a lot of people in general, that resume is kind of the boring thing that you do, that you just have to do. They don't really see it as a creative process. But talking to you, it's obvious this is a total creative process. This isn't just stating the facts. This is telling a story. This is personality. This is more than just this list of technologies you've used.
Yeah, and when you think about IT, it's very visual.
Yeah.
Okay? Even if you're just talking about a workflow diagram, I mean, it's very visual. And so people can use that. You can even, I put audios and videos in resumes. I put PowerPoint presentations. So there's a lot of ways that you can show what you do. And maybe you can create not a collage, but you can use the images that you use. And the thing is that people communicate differently. Some people do, but using a good image, you can create tremendous amount of information very quickly and easily, that people can capture that right away. Now, on the flip side, you got to be careful, because some people are truly awful creating images. But but so you want to use that to engage and the Apple thing, delight the customer.
Exactly.
Delight
Yes.
your reader. So,
Awesome. That's a great way to think. I mean, I don't think I think if you think about delighting the person who reads your resume, I think that's great. I love it. So Jennifer, I want to, well, first of all, before we get to the, where they can find you, I do want to just emphasize my point. I've said it a lot of times, I'll say it again. Use a professional resume writer. It's worth the investment. So worth the investment for the, however much you spend. Gosh, because they're gonna help you to write a much better resume. And if it increases your income by 10%, which is pretty dang easy to. In my experience, I got huge boosts in my income just by having a good resume that made it so I got a lot more job offers, a lot more interviews, which result in a lot more job offers. So I think it's well worth it. But so I'm enough of me selling that idea. If someone agrees with me and they want to use your services to get the resume written, where can they go and how can they get in contact with you?
I'm at itresumeservice.com. Jennifer Hay, itresumeservice.com.
Awesome.
I'm delighted. And the thing is that my process isn't going to be for everyone because it's fairly time consuming and so forth. So what I do, if anybody's interested, I set up an initial call. We'll chat, see if you like how I work, and then see if we're a good match or not. So.
Awesome. Yeah. And I highly recommend it. Jennifer, you're someone who I've recommended a long time. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people that have come through and use your services. So that's why I recommend you. I think I even in my soft skills book, I even have a link that talking about you, because I talk about getting a professionally written resume. So important. So thanks again. I think this will be great. A lot of good information.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I mean, I've just obviously I've followed you for a long time and so forth. So I always like getting your emails.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get some resumes, some good resumes, because next time I look at developer resume, I want to see one that has a story that's interesting, that delights me. So
I tell you what, I'll be on the lookout. Okay.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, next time you see a good one, I'd love to see it. So. Boy,
yeah, you'd be amazed. Okay, so I'll save the next one for you.
Okay, awesome. All right, Jennifer, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.